Hello, welcome to my DAT410 business case final analytic presentation. The presentation is focused around creating a targeted marketing profile for Lending Club's loans. First, a little about myself. My name is Jose Minaya. For 7 years, I served as a signals intelligence analyst in the United States Army, after which I went to work for a small contracting company that services state and federal prisons, helping by collecting and analyzing technical data to identify and extract contraband cellular devices in prisons. I am very well familiar with Excel and a variety of other analytic processes and tools to render information easy to understand. So what is a targeted marketing profile? According to Lori Hubbard, a targeted marketing profile should identify a target market that allows our marketers to focus on the most likely to purchase a product. By establishing a robust marketing profile, we can then make sure we target our marketing efforts at those clients that we know will be most likely to qualify for the loan. A stringent rejection profile from within that targeting market profile will protect our investment of resources in the marketing department from being targeted at individuals who would not qualify for our loans. By analyzing written and approved successful loans, as well as rejected non-successful loans, we can establish both of these profiles and improve our key performance indicators for the marketing department. Today, we will start by looking at what is the business case problem that we're trying to solve with our analytic effort, which is in essence how we are aiming at our target market. We'll then discuss the reliability and relevance of the Lending Club data available to our analytic effort. We will then discuss the actual target marketing profile that we've established, as well as the rejection profile we will use to protect our investment. Next, we will have targeted examples that will show how the profiles work together in tandem to shape and mold our marketing efforts. We'll stop for some questions, and then we'll continue with reflections on the analytic tools we used, as well as a closing for our entire presentation. The marketing team has asked us to conduct an analytic effort in order to establish a target marketing profile as well as a rejection profile to improve their ability to market at potential and prospective clients. There's a few steps we'll be taking in order to establish these two profiles. The first is we must first identify a window of loan amounts that represent 2/3 of the successful written loans. Once we've established that window of loan amounts that we are targeting, we can then establish the profile for marketing based on the factors that went into those written loans. We'll be addressing the borrower's state of residence, the term of the loan that they were written for, the grade of the loan that they were written for, the job title of the borrower, the employment length of the borrower in their current job, the home ownership status of the borrower, whether they rent, mortgage, own the house outright, or some other factor. Once we've established the marketing profile, we will then use the rejected loans that fall within the criteria of our marketing profile to establish factors that would result in individuals being included in the target marketing profile, but then failing to qualify for the loans. By creating this rejection profile, we can then exclude individuals who would otherwise fall within the targeted marketing profile and reduce our false positives. False positives in this analytic effort would be classified as a candidate who falls within the parameters of the target profile, but would end up failing to qualify for the loan, resulting in a waste of resources and effort in the marketing department with no potential for regaining the capital investment. At this time, I assess that the data we have before us is both reliable and relevant to the analytic problem we're solving. The data is directly from the lending club and overall appears to be reliable. I have no reason to question the veracity, integrity, or capability of the data to apply to the problem. There are some fields that have null values, and one field in particular seems to be consisting of self-entered values from the borrower that must either be ignored or addressed outside of the analytic process. The written and rejected loans have a difference in the collected data factors, but for the most part, a general profile both for marketing and rejection can be created with the data available. These two considerations, both the difference between the written and rejected loans data, as well as the self-entered and null values that we saw in the data, do not themselves create a problem for relevance, as I was able to both generate a targeted marketing profile and a rejection profile with the problems in the data. In further usage, data collection should be standardized whether the loan is written or not to allow for further improvements in the target and the rejection profile going forward. These profiles are not designed to be written once and never touched again. They must consistently and constantly be analyzed and readdressed in order to tighten and improve the profiles. And we'll talk about those specific factors later on in the presentation. The marketing team asks us to begin by identifying a profile to market loans to clients likely to be approved for our loan products. The factors we considered come from the lending club's written loan information available to us and detail the following factors of written loans that we applied into our profile: loan amount, loan term, loan grade, borrower job title, borrower's home ownership status, borrower's employment length, and the borrower's state of residence. We began by attempting to establish the window that represented 2/3 of the funded loan amounts that Lending Club wrote. We began by using a bar graph to represent the frequency of loans as counted within the bins. Each bin represents a $1,000 window of requested loan amounts. As you can see, the highlighted section represents 63.045% of the total written loans. The window ends up falling between $4,000 and $21,000 of the loan as it was funded. Therefore, each section of the graph is tallying all of the loan amounts between, for example, on the far left, $4,000 and $5,000. We could not include any of the sections to the right or left of the highlighted section, as it would have placed us over the 66% amount that would represent the 2/3. This is the closest we could come to the 2/3 given the data that we had. With the loan amount window defined, we proceeded to exclude any of the loans that were outside of the $4,000 to $21,000 window we analyzed. Next, we applied the coloring of the graph to create a stacked bar graph by the term of the loan. As you can see, the majority of the loans were 36-month loans. We therefore assess that the first factor in our target marketing profile is to target borrowers looking for 36-month loans, as that will yield a higher success rate given the window of amounts we are targeting. In other words, the majority of the loans here are funded, which means that if we see, as we have here in the blue, that the majority of the loans funded and approved were 36-month term, we should therefore target 36-month term borrowers, as they will be more likely to be approved given the window of range that we are looking at. Again, with the $4,000 to $21,000 window, we excluded any of the loans that were outside of that window, and we applied color to the graph based on home ownership. Again, this creates that stark stacked bar graph that clearly shows that in the dark blue are mortgages, in the green are renters, and the light blue section are owners of their own home. We assess, therefore, that we should target renters and mortgagees for our loan products. The difference between the two is negligible in that we should target both equally, but as we can see, very few of our borrowers that were approved for loans were owners outright of their home. Therefore, we should not waste any effort targeting owners of their homes for loan products from Lending Club. Again, starting with the bar graph, excluding any loan amounts that were written over 21,000 or below $4,000, we can see that the graph is now colored by the loan grade. The majority of the loans written were graded D or better. Given the range of grades from A through D and the varying amount of loans written in A, B, C, and D grade, we assess that we should target any grade above D, as it would be likely to get approved and written by Lending Club. Next, we continued the same pattern, again excluding any of the data below 4,000 or above 21,000, and we this time colored the stacked bar graph by the employment length. There are far more options here for the borrowers, from as little as 1 year to as much as 10 years. As such, we assess that we should target all borrowers who have been employed for 1 year or more. The only loans that we should exclude are likely anything less than 1 year. By establishing the profile from 1 year to 10 years plus, we know that we would likely hit the majority of the approval market. Again, continuing with the same process, we excluded any data for any loan less than $4,000 or more than $21,000. Again, we can see that there are a variety of colors on this graph, creating a stacked bar effect. This graph is based on the job title. There were so many different job titles, in fact, that we had to address it by only showing the top 10 repeated amounts. So as you can see, we see sales, RN, supervisor, US Army, etc. The point being that this factor does not really give us any information that we can use to create a good, solid, defined target. In effect, we assess therefore that this should be ignored. The job title appears to be a freely entered section for the borrower, and the job title itself does not really weigh in much one way or the other to allow us to make any assessment because it is a freely entered text. If we were to standardize the text and create categorized, standardized, structured choices for our borrowers, we could potentially return back to this factor and apply analytic process to tighten our profile. Last, we defined the target by looking at the states of residence of the borrowers. Highlighted are the 4 states that produced more than 5% of the loans written. California, Texas, New York, and Florida each represented a significant amount of our loans. California being the highest at 16%, followed by New York, Texas, and Florida. We therefore assess that we should target our loan marketing at California, New York, Texas, and Florida, respectively. So to recap, our targeted marketing profile needs to be looking at borrowers who are looking for a loan between $4,000 and $21,000 on a loan term of 36 months. They must either be renting or mortgaging their home. The loan grade they must be a D or better. They must have been employed in their current job for 1 or more years, and they must reside in California, New York, Texas, or Florida. Now we will establish our rejection profile. How do we exclude clients that would likely fail to qualify for our loan? To develop a rejection profile, we examined the rejected loans from the lending club. The information from the lending club's rejected loans is limited in that we don't have the borrower's loan grade, but we do have other factors that we did not get from our written loans, such as the risk score and the debt to income ratio. The first step in our establishing our rejection profile was again to look at all of the loans that were rejected in our data from Lending Club and whittle them down to just the bin ranges that we were looking at previously that represented 2/3 of the approved loans, again between $4,000 and $21,000. You can see those loans highlighted here in this bar graph. We also then proceeded to exclude any loans that were outside of the 4 states we wanted to target: California, New York, Texas, and Florida. The first factor we can consider is employment length. As you can see here, the majority of the rejected loans had borrowers who were employed in their current job for less than 1 year. However, this does not necessarily need to be built into our rejection profile, as our targeted marketing profile would not even select these borrowers to begin with. We are only looking for borrowers who were 1 year employed or more in their current job. As you can see, we do have some loans with some individuals that were over that 1 year mark. While we are interested in those loans specifically, we chose to analyze all of the loans, including those that were less than a year, in order to flesh out more data to shape our rejection profile. The first factor we actually can use in our rejection profile is the risk score. As you can see in these loans, the stacked bar graph is creating bins between basically 100 points of risk score, starting at the lowest value of 300 to 400 and going all the way up to values between 901 and 990. As you can see, most of our rejected loans had risk scores below 700. Therefore, our first factor in our rejection profile is a risk score below 700. Next, we took the same loans and applied the debt to income ratio data that we had from the rejected loans, again creating that stacked bar graph. Each of the colors represents a 10% swing in the debt to income ratio. For example, the first bin is between 0 to 10% debt to income ratio. When it comes to debt to income ratio, the positive numbers imply that our borrower has more debt than they generate in income every month. The higher the number, the more likely our borrower is to default on the loan. In turn, one of the major factors of whether or not the borrower qualifies for the loan is the debt to income ratio. We assess that we should not market to any potential borrower with a positive debt to income ratio greater than 10%. And further, we suggest that we should honestly try to avoid any positive debt to income ratio, given the indicative likelihood of a default on the part of the borrower. In other words, debt to income ratios in the dark blue category at the top of the bars, which represents 0 to 10% debt to income ratio, are much higher risk than the bars representing the -1 debt to income ratio, or any negative debt to income ratio, which implies more income than debt for the borrower. So to recap, there's only two major factors in our rejection profile: a risk score below 700 and a positive debt to income ratio above 10%. This rejection profile, while seemingly simple, is actually should serve to remove the false positives. As we already established previously, the 1 year and more employment factor in the acceptance or the marketing profile is already going to exclude quite a lot of potential rejections, because as we saw in our rejection loans, a lot of them had less than a year of employment. However, knowing that we're only accepting risk scores above 700, in other words, that those would only be the ones that would pass the rejection profile we've established, or who have debt to income ratios less than 10%, we can feel a little comfortable in that we'll reduce our false positive rate. So now I'd like to move into targeted examples. The intent of the targeted examples is to show how the two profiles we've established work together in tandem to, one, improve our marketing by focusing on individuals that will likely be approved for the loan, and two, reduce our false positives by rejecting individuals who would otherwise fall within our targeted profile and yet ultimately fail to qualify for the loan. Our first example is Jane Doe. Jane is requesting a loan for home repairs of $6,000. She is asking for a 32-month term. Her loan is graded at C. Her employment length is 3 years, and she's from Florida. Her risk score is a 720, and her debt to income ratio is negative half a percentile. As such, Jane would be marketed to by our marketing team and likely be approved for the loan, thus improving our ability by finding Jane, being able to market to her, and hopefully she purchases our product. The second example is John Doe. John is requesting a loan to build a pool in his house for $19,000. He's asking for a 36-month term. His loan is grade D. He's been employed for 1 year, and he's from California. His risk score is 690, and his debt to income ratio is 27%. As you can see on the top of this graphic, John would in fact fall within our targeted marketing profile. However, our rejection profile would prevent us from marketing to him. Attractive as he may be in the factors for our accepted targeted marketing profile, the rejection profile in this case would protect us from wasting resources by marketing to John only to have him fail to qualify for the loan at the end. With that said, this concludes the presentation. Do we have any questions about the targeted marketing profile or the targeted rejection profile? The next steps for the usage of our targeted marketing and rejection profiles are going to be imperative in that failing to qualify for a loan indicates a poor selection by a target profile, and that the rejection criteria was unable to identify that this individual would not qualify. Overall, it results in a waste of resources for you, the marketing department. These failures should be recorded along with surrounding data about the borrower to help us tighten the target profile or widen the rejection criteria to limit further false positives. The next steps after we've established and begin using these two profiles is to collect more data, classification and surrounding data about our prospective candidates to improve our profiles. The intent being that if we can more restrict our targeted marketing profile or expand our rejection profile, we should encapsulate the fringe elements of either A, targets that we are potentially missing, or B, rejection candidates that should have been rejected but were not. We should continuously improve our target and rejection profiles by examining the factors of successfully written and the targets of our marketing who fail to qualify. By looking at those two factors, whether they end up successfully being written or get rejected from their loans, by examining the classification and surrounding data, that will allow us to better improve those two profiles, hopefully avoiding even having to use the rejection profile ideally, or at least having a strong rejection profile that will eliminate our false positives. Last, we need to ensure that our data quality and the integrity of our data is rigorous to avoid null or missing values in our data collection from applicants. The concept of a free text field, while great for a borrower who can fill in whatever unexpected value they have, creates a significant problem for us on the analytic end in the back end because free text is unstructured, and unstructured text makes it difficult to encapsulate into a standardized profile that we can use to evaluate all individuals as they come. All of the analytic processes that resulted in these two profiles were done in Tableau. Tableau is a very efficient program in that it was able to very quickly and easily load and transform all of the data from the Excel file from Lending Club. That data was easy to quickly encapsulate and put into different methods, which would then result in intuitive methods for creating and utilizing the visualizations. Simply dragging and dropping values allowed us to create bar graphs or any other graphics. We ended up using bar graphs and stacked data bar graphs because it allowed us to easily evaluate from factor to factor and across the board for what factor was the most likely impactful in that region. The visualizations were easy and were able to display multiple aspects of the data in the stacked variety of the bar graph. The graphical maps that represented California, Texas, New York, and Florida were very easy to create in Tableau. Overall, Tableau is a really great product for analytics, and I'm excited to have learned a little bit more about it, and I look forward to my next time using it. That concludes my DAT410 analytic presentation. Thank you for your time. Have a wonderful day.